Most tsunamis occur in the Pacific, but earthquakes are not the only cause of these killer waves.
There are at least 4 causes of tsunami. There are earthquakes, which cause tectonic displacement of the sea floor. There are asteroids, which are thought to cause very massive tsunami, but are very infrequent. There are also volcanic eruptions, which can lead to landslides, and an explosive eruption beneath the seafloor causes tsunami. There are also spontaneous landslides, either that occur above the water and insert mass into the water column, or underneath the ocean that change the shape of the ocean floor. But if you're actually going to take concrete steps towards mitigating these kind of hazards, you really have to do some kind of risk analysis and decide where the risk is greatest.
It's estimated that tsunamis pose some degree of risk to almost a quarter of the world's population. A number of scientists fear that in the Canary Islands, off the west coast of Africa, 120 cubic miles of the Cumbre Vieja volcano could collapse into the Atlantic Ocean, creating an enormous tsunami.
That may generate waves 100 meters high in the Canary Islands themselves, and maybe 7 to 10 meters on the south coast of the UK, and waves that are 20 meters high all down the eastern coast of the US. When they hit the eastern coast of the United States, they're estimated to expend the same energy for every 100 meters of coastline as was generated by the collapse of the Twin Towers. And that's for thousands of kilometers all the way down the east coast.
The United States is adding 32 new buoys to the existing tsunami warning system to increase protection in the Pacific, Atlantic, and Caribbean. And world leaders are calling for a warning system in the Indian Ocean, where there are seismometers, but no tsunami sensors.
We've got to try to help them rebuild and start again, and have an early warning system, have systems to mitigate disasters that do occur so fewer people die in the future.
But technology is not the only solution.
One of the big issues about warning is that after you've told people that tsunami is coming, they also have to be educated on what to do and where to go.
To us that have been working on subduction earthquakes for a long time, we see the tsunami warning system. It's really not just buoys in the ocean, but it's really 3 parts. It's one part is the buoys in the ocean, one part is educating the people, and the third part is research.
Within 10 seconds, the volcano's northern flank collapses in the largest landslide in recorded history. It releases millions of tons of magma in a colossal explosion. But the landslide has torn 1,300 feet off the summit, leaving a gaping crater a mile wide and 2,000 feet deep. It's the largest volcanic eruption in North America in nearly a century.
Than Hurricane Katrina, worse than the San Francisco earthquake of 1906. Scientists and FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, are warning of a pending doom for the Pacific Northwest. An earthquake along a little-known fault line that would
700 miles off the Pacific Northwest coast. Experts think it will trigger the worst national disaster in North American history, and it is overdue.
It is the mother of all earthquake faults. It can pack a wallop 30 times that of the San Andreas fault. So forget all the Hollywood hype about the San Andreas fault. We're talking about an earthquake, a 9.0, similar to what devastated northern Japan, which killed over 15,000 people and caused $250 billion in property damage.
Frankly, if I lived right now in the Pacific Northwest, I'd be considering moving. Seriously. In Japan, just a few years ago, remember that? Killed more than 15,000 people in the north of Japan and injured thousands of others. Seismologists say that the quake that will strike on our Pacific Northwest coastline should be even stronger, at up to a 9.2. They call such a quake a margin rupture quake, and it's every bit as bad as it sounds. Here's the reason for it. Our entire continent sits on the North American tectonic shelf, right? Plate, I should say. Off the coast of the Pacific Northwest, from the top of Washington State all the way down to northern California. This is it. And another plate called the Juan de Fuca is trying to slide up under North America, but it's stuck. We have an illustration. The New Yorker quotes a FEMA official who says, and I quote, "Our operating assumption is that everything west of Interstate 5 will be toast." Everything west of Interstate 5 is gone. That's Seattle, Tacoma, Portland and Olympia, Salem and Eugene, wiped out, altogether about 7 million people. That's not including tourists. So think of summertime. The New Yorker reports that FEMA calculations indicate the disaster will damage or destroy about 1 million buildings, including 3,000 schools and 1/3 of all fire stations. And perhaps the worst part of all of this, these sorts of earthquakes happen at regular intervals in exactly this part of the world, have forever. On average, according to seismologists, about every 240 years. So when was the last one of these? These massive 9.2 or so earthquakes? Well, the last one was more than 300 years ago, the year 1700. It struck in the Pacific Northwest and sent a 600-foot wave of water all the way to Japan. So right now, on average, the Pacific Northwest is decades overdue for the really, really big one.
Meanwhile, over here on the West Coast, subduction not taking place. Instead, we're seeing pressure come from the Pacific Northwest, placed upon the North American craton and causing a dramatic rise of inches in a year's time in the Pacific Northwest. Yellowstone rising over 2.5, almost 3 inches in just 6 months' time last year, measured by GPS measurements. You don't have to take my word for it. And that's just in Yellowstone, the whole region, not just Yellowstone National Park, but the whole region measured with that uplift, and pressed to the southeast. Pressed from here down by a 1/2 inch in 6 months' time. And the West Coast, the entire state of California, remember all those articles last year, guys, state of California rises a 1/2 inch in 1 year's time.
There are more than 7 billion people alive today. No matter what country they're from, no matter what language they speak, every one of them can look at this image and say, that's my home. And we're the first generation to feel the impact of climate change. We're the last generation that can do something about it. We only get one home. We only get one planet. There's no plan B. I don't want my grandkids not to be able to swim in Hawaii or not to be able to climb a mountain and see a glacier because we didn't do something about it. I don't want millions of people's lives disrupted and this world more dangerous because we didn't do something about it. That'd be shameful of us. This is our moment to get this right and leave something better for our kids. Let's make most of that opportunity. Thank you, everybody. God bless you.